Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Big Bros podcast. If it's your first time joining, welcome. My name is Ilan, and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host, Jeremy. How are we?
I'm well. How are you, mate?
I'm fantastic. I'm a bit cold down here. I'm not going to lie. It feels like the Arctic down here in your basement, but we'll get through.
Well, yeah, it allows us to actually stay a little bit alert, I reckon, as opposed to feeling nice and cozy. And for an episode like this, a little bit of alertness and focus is well required, because today we're talking all about how men grieve differently to women, especially after breakups. Well, that's mainly the focus today. It's after breakup grieving, healing post-breakup, going through the motions. What are the differences between men and women? What are our experiences with it? What have we seen amongst our friends in similar environments, in similar situations? And just another prevalent and relevant topic to talk about when in this month's theme of men's health.
There is no doubt that men struggle with opening up, with processing how they feel, with labeling how they feel, and actually working through what's causing them distress, right? And this is not just in the context of breakups. This is with a lot of things. It's all far too common for men to be like, she'll be right.
We sweep things under the rug.
Order a pint.
Yep.
Better to get under them to get over them, and so forth. And I think that extends to so many contexts, right? Whereas, in the breakup context, you see a lot of women, they may seem, at least at the start, that they're taking the breakup harder than the guy. And this is, of course, stereotypical, and I'm making generalizations, but they're true for a reason. And it's because a lot of girls aren't afraid to actually process how they're feeling. They're not afraid to tell their loved ones, their close friendship circles, that I'm really, really struggling right now. I'm going through the pits. I want to cry. I want to identify this is sadness. And guess what? They're giving themselves the opportunity to grieve the loss of the relationship. A lot of guys don't. And why do you think that might be the case?
Well, oftentimes it gets misconstrued. Firstly, when we see the girls going through the motions and taking it hard versus maybe the guy that doesn't take it or visibly take it that hard, because that's the key here. It's visible sadness. That's how we're judging it here. And that can be misconstrued because, the guy might be feeling just as sad. He might not look it, but he might be feeling just as sad as the girl in the situation, but he doesn't express it. He doesn't open up about it. He says he might be feeling a little bit shit, but then he's also ready to get back on the town that weekend. He's ready to just put it to bed, not think about it, go full no contact mode, and just carry on like it was nothing that ever happened, and that 3 years that they were together was just a blur in a way. And sometimes when you face a guy like this, he might be in your friendship group, and you bring up, how's it going, mate? What have you been doing? How have you been managing this? How have you felt in the last X or so many weeks when this has happened? He might be quick to be like, oh yeah, mate, don't worry. I'm fine. I'm getting over it. But like what we spoke about last week, ask that next time, ask that second time, third time, not in a way that is, causing them a lot of turmoil, because they might not want to talk about it, and they'll open up to you if they truly do. But if you just probe them a little bit more and say, it is hard what you're going through. I get it. Maybe I've been there before, or maybe you haven't. But if you have, you can kind of share that relatability a little bit. And just say, I get it, mate. It is tough. It's fine if you don't want to open up about it right now. I am here for you if you do want to talk about it, because it won't just happen overnight. And I think knowing that it won't happen overnight is the first step for guys when going through something like this, because we think that it will just happen overnight. We think that it'll just be as easy as finding someone else very quickly and forming that relationship again. And that's where we find ourselves getting into hot water, because it's later on down the line where we go, oh shit, what I thought would maybe happen hasn't happened yet. I haven't found that next person that maybe I thought I would. And then the grieving starts.
If you don't give yourself the chance to actually grieve, because ask yourself, what does it mean to actually process what you're feeling? It means you have to absolutely just sit there in the doldrums with your despair and all this pain and discomfort, right? That's a scary proposition, right? Imagine you've been dating this person for 3 years and now they're out of your life for whatever reason, and now you have to sit there and try and make meaning out of that, right? You have to reflect on all those memories that you had. You have to talk about how you're feeling, and that's foreign to you. You've never done that before, right? So
it's also foreign to the body. It's like coming down from a drug, isn't it?
Correct. It is, and love is a drug, and so once and it's not just the drug aspect of the love. It's the fact that you've now essentially have to recalibrate your entire routine because what you were used to is now essentially removed from you. So your body's trying to adjust to this new normal and you're not going to feel comfortable with it. But the problem is if you then, as a guy, and this is where kind of the social narratives around vulnerability come into play, is that for a guy, if you then admit that's bloody scary and I don't want to feel this discomfort, well, then you're maybe worried that others are going to think less of you, that they're not going to think that you're strong. And the truth of the matter is then you're more likely to internalize that pain. And what happens then? How do you internalize it? Well, you just tell everyone, as you said, that everything's fine. You'll go out, you'll consume alcohol, you have drugs, you'll do anything to numb that feeling because you don't want to show anyone that you're actually going through pain. You want everyone else to think that you're strong and you're winning the breakup as well. You know how big that is for people? In this day and age, if you're on social media, there's always one partner that when you break up with them and they never post on social media, but suddenly after the breakup, they're just on social media every day. And they're posting every Instagram story of every Aperol spritz they're having at 5 o'clock at a fucking, at a bar and so forth. So you notice these little changes, but the point is there's this inherent fear of actually processing what you're feeling because it's scary. And I think it's fine to normalize that. And I think we're getting better as a society, especially in the context of Men's Mental Health Month, of actually celebrating that, of celebrating the fact that, men can actually feel something and feel discomfort. And it doesn't actually mean that they're weak as a human.
Absolutely. I think a big part of this stems from the ego, which we did briefly mention before. I don't think women have an ego as big as what a man does, rather, when it comes to showing their emotions and letting themselves feel the pain as much as this. As men, we like to protect our ego. We like to show that we're strong, like you mentioned. We don't want to show to not just our mates, but to other women as well, that we might be feeling weak and vulnerable at this point in time, or raw or sad. We don't want to show that because we might think that it might potentially ruin our chances in the future. It might look on the face of it to other people that they are still in love with that person and therefore, they're off limits in a way. Men think that way. Men think it might ruin their chances with future women because they don't want to be perceived as that person that might not be able to fall in love with someone else again. So they put up this front, they say, I'm strong, I'm over them, I'm all good now, and I'm ready to crack on again. And it just eats them up because they haven't processed their emotions and their ego has just gotten the better of them. Women are so good at processing and not letting that ego eat them up. They take it, they feel the pain, and they oftentimes find the ways to work out how they can best get through that, whether that's through their friends, whether that's through journaling, self-care activities. When do you ever see guys publicizing doing those self-care activities? You don't see it all that often. It's always women that are doing those things, and we need to take a leaf out of their book in a way and actually doing those things and not just trying to be so robust and get back out on the town and try to get with many women just to try to get over the last one. It's the worst way to go about it. We stress this point so often, and oftentimes it's due to that ego.
It's true. And I think a lot of people, there's advice that if you go through a breakup, give yourself 2 to 3 days where you just give yourself permission to absolutely let yourself be unhinged. Start crying, do what you need to do, eat that ice cream, indulge, and, take a mental health day. Most companies and places of work offer that as an opportunity now. And if you're going through that, you don't have to speculate or stipulate why you're taking a mental health day, but give yourself that opportunity of 2 or 3 days where you can absolutely just bawl your eyes out, because what happens when you cry, you actually process how you're feeling.
You're releasing those emotions.
Correct. You're releasing it. Your brain is almost, it's not fighting anything. You're just letting yourself be. And there's something therapeutic in that. It might be painful, but you're actually allowing yourself to move that needle a little bit, because if you're not going to at least let yourself process it now, it's going to have to be processed at some point. And if it has to be processed at some point, You wouldn't know when that's going to be. It's better to not actually put your head in the sand. And this is kind of, I'll speak from personal experience. My first ever relationship, when that ended, I was overseas. So for me, a lot of it was like, okay, I can't be asked processing it now. I'm overseas with friends. I want to be partying. I want to enjoy myself.
Put it on the back burner.
And you know what? Fair enough. Like if you're overseas, you want to have fun. You don't want to let it destroy you. I kind of didn't. So for the first 2 weeks, it didn't bother me to the extent that I thought it would. Truthfully, I was just numbing it. You know, I was going out most nights. I was getting drunk. I was on holiday. I was living, a novel life. But then I think with about a week left before I was going home, it just hit me all at once. And it hit me like a ton of bricks because I actually didn't allow myself to process it. I was around friends. I didn't want to show them I was crying. I didn't want to show them how I was feeling. I wanted to just, kick the can down the road. And unfortunately, it bit me on the ass. And
so when you say it hit you like a ton of bricks once you got back home?
Not once I got back home, but about a week before I came home.
Yeah. So, when you get into the tail end of that trip, did that mean release of those emotions came out? There were tears then that weren't there beforehand?
100%. Of course. I was bawling my eyes out at certain points. And I think that, it was going to happen at some point. And whilst it was difficult, that's just the grieving process, right? If you're not releasing those emotions, then it's going to come out at a certain point. Your body, there's a book called The Body Keeps a Score, and it's to do with how the body stores trauma and traumatic experiences and so forth. That's not to say that what I went through was a trauma. It was just to say that your body oftentimes stores a lot of stress. And tears are, when you release tears, there's an element of it, you're processing it, but you're also releasing stress. So that's why if you kind of sample tears in like a lab, you'll see there's a lot of cortisol in there, right? So it makes sense. But it was going to happen at some point, right? I'm glad that it did happen and I was able to grieve it, a few weeks down the line rather than 3-4 months down the line. But the only reason I was able to grieve it was because for that part of the holiday, when I was like 19, I didn't have I had the opportunity to drink, but I had just come off a bender in Mykonos. So the last thing I want to do is drink. And what happens then? Your body's kind of recovering. It's coming down from that high where you're going out every night and it's recovering. And now suddenly you're forced to have kind of the anxiety of, being drunk all the time. But then also, this is kind of what my life is. I've just gone through a breakup and it's kind of painful, isn't it? I have to now experience this pain, this element of loss. And it was uncomfortable. I hated life for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I got home, everything was fine. But the point I'm making there is that I kind of delayed that grieving for about a week or two, and then it bit me on the ass. And I see it in our own friends as well. Some friends who have broken up, they're fine for a few weeks, and it bites them on the ass in 2-3 months.
You mentioned something there, which is it's going to happen eventually. You're going to have to grieve eventually. Those emotions are going to hit you eventually. Sounds simple. I never thought about it like that. And I don't think a lot of people do. I don't think guys think about that all that often. If you're going through that element of grief, if you've experienced something traumatic in a way, because it is traumatic going through something of a breakup a lot of the time where maybe you've been with that person for a long period of time, you've had love there with each other, you've got that habit build up of things, of lifestyle, and then all of a sudden it's gone. You guys turn from lovers to strangers. That's an element of trauma in a way. So you're going to have to grieve that. You're going to have to process and heal that. And I'd never thought of it in the sense that you're going to have to do it eventually. So why not start doing it now? Why delay it? You're just going to make it harder for yourself. That snowball is just going to keep compounding. Just start doing it now. Don't delay it.
So one of the theories about PTSD and traumatic memories is that when something really traumatic happens, the brain can't actually file that experience into its archive. So it can't actually, like if you're a librarian and you're trying to file books into different shelves and so forth, the traumatic memory is so scattered, it's so confusing and it's so salient that you can't actually categorize it. You're trying to make meaning of it. So what happens is all the books are just kind of, dispersed around the library. And how does that manifest? That manifests with tears, sadness, flashbacks. In the PTSD context, it's anything that gives you a semblance of a reminder of that traumatic memory. It can just shoot you into disarray. So the problem is, by crying, by thinking about it, by allowing yourself the ability not to suppress it. And this doesn't go for just deeply salient traumatic experiences, but any experience where you have to grieve, by actually allowing yourself to think and reflect, even if it's uncomfortable and even if it's sad, it gives your brain the opportunity to encode it as a long-term memory. And the beauty about that is if it encodes it as a long-term memory, it therefore isn't going to be as disorganized. So there's like a weird physiology behind it for sure. And psychologically, it's really interesting, but it just speaks to the importance of why we shouldn't numb ourselves to certain experiences. And when I say numb, it doesn't have to just be drugs and alcohol. It can be pornography. It can be sleeping with the next person. It can be engaging in other vices, gambling, right? It can be anything that takes you away from actually thinking about it. And I don't necessarily believe that there's a difference between kind of ruminating on what happened, where you're just kind of beating yourself up over it, and gently allowing yourself to explore what happened, right? Listen to the terms I'm using: explore versus ruminate. Because if you explore what happened, you can be reflective. And if you're reflective, you're not going to be shitting on yourself. You're just going to say, this happened, this hurt, and you just go through the necessary protocol.
That's a point of maturity: exploring versus ruminating. Exploring being like, what happened? What am I going to learn from it? What am I not going to tolerate or put up with going forward? What do I now want? That's that exploration. That takes a lot of maturity. That rumination, rather, is that belief of course this happened to me. Why did this happen to me? I'm not going to get anything of this sort in the future. They were the best person I've ever been with. I'm not going to find anyone like them. And that is that ego talking there. That's that sense of self inside of you that feels like they've been slashed, that feels like they've been hurt, that feels like they're raw and vulnerable, and they cannot see a way through at that point. But flipping that mindset and thinking, okay, yes, I feel that way, but what am I going to do about that now? That's where that exploration part comes into play there, and that's where that maturity comes into play. And girls do that better than guys. I still believe that. Yes, we're getting better as guys at doing this, but there is still a key theme of us as men delaying when those thoughts come into play. It can take a long time. Girls get back on the horse pretty quickly when it comes to that. They're pretty quick to get around their girls, and their girl mates get around them and say, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that. Any guy is lucky to have you. They build them up with confidence again. They tell them that there are other good guys out there for them. There are guys that are out there for them that treat them well, and they start doing the work themselves. Whereas oftentimes as guys, we tend to ruminate a little bit and put those emotions to the side and just try to distract ourselves, whether it is with the alcohol or the drugs or the trying to sleep with someone else or get with someone else. We put it on the back burner and distract ourselves. And that theme comes up later down the line, which we cautioned about earlier in the episode. Why do men tend to feel that way only once they see their ex-partner start to then move on, start to better themselves, start to maybe even find someone? Why is it that it takes for that to happen, for that to be seen, for that light to switch in the guy's mind to then start to do the work and to start doing that exploration that we talk about that should happen from the start?
I think it depends on the breakup. If the guy broke up with the girl and for whatever reason they still end up talking and communicating and having some form of line of communication, 6-7 months down the line, you've kind of haven't given yourself the opportunity to get over them. And what happens then is that you feel like you've got this power and control because you ended it with them, but you're still maintaining lines of communication. So then when you actually see them moving on, going on dates, it's kind of stripped you of your power. It's stripped you of your influence. And that's kind of where I reckon that ego argument comes into play, because you felt secure, right? You felt secure that despite you breaking up, you were able to control things. You were controlling the communication. You may have even caught up with each other a couple of times, but you didn't actually break up with them fully. You never gave yourself the opportunity to actually get over them. So no shit, you're going to be feeling a sense of betrayal, sadness, anger, even though those are, not to say that they're not invalid, but it's like, what do you expect, right? It's like when you've broken up with them, but you've still maintained a line of communication. So I think that can happen quite often because, again, in that case, if I'm still maintaining communication with someone who I've broken up with, am I letting myself grieve?
No, and you also might be still holding on to the sense of hope that there might be another chance there for you guys. It might rekindle, it might light a flame again, and you could end up getting back to where you were. And like you said, you're not giving that chance to grieve. You're not even, let alone grieving, you're not even allowing yourself to see the world in a different light, see the world without that person being in your world anymore. So that's where those boundaries should be set post-breakup, and not often are they always set. I'm a believer that a lot of times they kind of should be set, unless of course there's extreme circumstances, but it allows you to then move on deliberately with a sense of liberation. I believe, at least.
I think you're right, unless you've got a child with that parent and you're co-parenting, that's a different story. But for most people,
for our age demographic,
at least, I do believe that if you do break up with someone, it's best just to cut communication with them. It's not saying you block them. It doesn't mean that you have to, unfollow them, but it might mean muting them. It might mean not having reminders of them or having opportunities to speak to them. Granted, it's probably hard if you have a similar friendship group to them. And I think this is like where high school relationships might be a little bit challenging, or people who still maintain those social networks after school where there's a lot of mutuals, and that's really, really tough. But as best as you can, it's probably wise not to keep those communication lines open.
Yeah.
It's definitely easier to, because it's what's familiar. It's the devil you know rather than the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And I think that over time, you're just ripping off that Band-Aid so slowly rather than just getting it over and done with. And that's why I think girls do get better. So like back to the original point we were making, that's why I think girls are good at grieving, is because they rip the Band-Aid off so quickly. They're comforted by their girlfriends that tell them, we love you, you're valued. He may have not valued you, but you're valued. It's okay that you're crying, fair enough. Who wouldn't be crying? Whereas with a guy, we're feeling, fuck, I can't cry. That's weak. Like, I'm such a weak person. And we criticize ourselves for feeling something. So we end up self-invalidating ourselves. And then we're caught in this circle where we do self-invalidate, but we also feel shit about it. So it's just like vicious cycle. So, if you've got a mate going through a breakup, don't just assume they're fine. They very well might be, and there might be reasons that they look okay, but always ask and just check in on them. Don't play dumb. Don't just assume, they went through a breakup, it's fine. And you know what? You're not going to be able to force them to actually chat about it. They'll come to you if they feel safe and comfortable. And sometimes it's really, really hard. I mean, I'll tell you what. There's people who in my friendship group that when they've gone through a breakup, I swear they internalize the shit out of everything. Do I think it's healthy? Absolutely not. But you know what? I think the thought of them having a conversation where they're vulnerable is too damn scary for them. And if it's too damn scary for them, what can I do? The best I can do is make them feel safe about it and feel like if they ever do want to chat about it, that's fine. And that's sometimes what your role is going to be as a friend.
Well, that's our messaging overall, isn't it? It's how can we best make them feel like they're in a safe space to be able to eventually, hopefully, open up and discuss those things. And to the guys listening, that is all you can do. You can't make someone talk if they don't want to talk. You can't rip the words out of their mouth and get them down and strap them down to a chair and say, mate, just bloody talk to me. You can't do that. You got to be gentle in a way with it as well. And just like we spoke about in last week's episode, get yourself doing something with them, whether it's a hobby, whether it's a thing you guys can enjoy. That is often a good way to open up a conversation for something like this and to invite those raw chats to unfold. We don't necessarily respond to being face-to-face a lot of the time together, but if you put two guys on a walk, things will unfold. Things tend to unfold when guys aren't looking eye to eye with each other a lot. Goes back to that evolutionary psychology concept, which is we've discussed a fair bit on the show about when guys do lock eyes together, they stand or sit face to face together, it builds a sense of we are going to battle. We are about to do war together in evolutionary times. So that's why we still feel that inherently as men now. But if you get yourselves walking somewhere in an environment where you've got that open body language with each other, you're more likely to feel comfortable. You're more likely to open up together.
Exactly. And I think another thing that needs to be spoken about is, and this might be more for young men, but a lot of young men have their self-worth trapped in whether they've got a relationship or not. We see it. That can't be a good thing, no. Right? Because if you lose that, what else do you have? And then you feel this sense of meaningless and hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay. If you're a young guy and you haven't found your place in the world and that was the only thing going for you, fair enough, you're going to feel sad. But I think that can be one of the most... it can be one of those events that actually sets you forward into finding your purpose and meaning, because if you then come to the realization that, gee, I had nothing else going for me other than this relationship, and that's probably perhaps why they broke up with me, it can set you off in two paths. It can set you off in the bloody red pill manosphere path where you end up just hating women and so forth, or it can set you in the path of like, okay, what did this breakup teach me? Well, it taught me that I actually need to have more things going on in my life. I need to be more independent. I can't be as codependent. I've got to find a reason to live on this earth that is for me rather than because of someone else.
And I think with that point, if you're in a friendship group and maybe you're thinking of that friend of yours that has been in a really long-term relationship, particularly a relationship that started from maybe the late teens, maybe within school, and you're now in your early 20s and that relationship has unfortunately maybe come to an end, that's the person that you might need to be a little bit cautious about when looking for that identity crisis, because unfortunately this person's just known no different. It's not their fault, but they've known no different as to what is life without this person. They've gone through maybe their later years of school with them, those transition periods into adulthood, into uni, into now maybe in their mid-20s, and only now are they experiencing life without them. And it happens, and those are the people that you see might turn into a really bad way. They might really struggle with rediscovering their purpose, rediscovering their sense of confidence, their sense of who they are as a person without their partner by their side. People that maybe go through breakups a little bit later and maybe haven't had to have, or maybe haven't had those earlier relationships in their early 20s, I find in terms of general trends, they seem to handle things a little bit better in terms of their identity. They don't really have that major identity shift or loss or lack of self-esteem. But you see it in those relationships that have been held for a long period of time, have been held since late teenhood and have progressed into early adulthood, and then it comes crashing down. Those are the people you got to be careful of. So if you've got those people within your friendship group, just tread carefully, look out for them, be gentle with them, because that would be an even rougher it'd be a rougher thing to deal with and a rougher breakup to deal with, maybe compared to the average person if you did have to somewhat compare breakups.
If you are a man going through a breakup and you might be listening to this episode and you might be asking, okay, great, maybe I'll just grieve now. And maybe it's not a conscious decision, but maybe you're like, when is this going to pass? Well, I'll tell you what, it'll pass much quicker if you allow yourself the opportunity to grieve now rather than later. So, you know, it might be a Saturday night. You might be feeling weird. You know, you might be going out. You might have her Instagram profile unmuted. So you're going to be seeing everything potentially. That is okay. That's all part of the journey of grieving. It's not to say that you're going to try and bring up reminders of that person, of her, but it is to say that allowing yourself to be sad, allowing yourself the opportunity to tell your friends and maybe your close loved ones that you are feeling a bit flat because of everything, that's only going to speed up the process. So even if it doesn't feel like it's going to speed it up, I promise you it will. But at the same time, don't force it. Don't force it to be sped up. Just allow yourself to be.
And as a mate, in that circumstance, if you do have a mate in your group that is going through it, that is really doing it tough at the moment post-breakup, don't be that guy to force him to come out either.
Oh, fuck no. That is terrible. It's the worst advice. And guess what? The problem is a lot of, like, your mates are trying to help you. They're trying to get you, you know, into a positive state of being and have fun. And guess what? It might be great in the moment, but when that anxiety hits, that regret hits.
But you can still try to get them in that positive state, but maybe do it in an environment that they actually want to be in. They probably don't want to be at bloody the SB on a Saturday night with you when they're going through it, you know? They might actually want to be in their house watching the footy loosely on the telly, having some takeaway with you, and that is all they need, and that is fine. That is an environment where you can still be positive with them. You can still try to lighten mood, and that mood can come from just general conversation, and it doesn't feel like it's fabricated. It doesn't feel like you need to get them out and get them in the public eye that they probably don't want to be in just yet. So don't be that guy that forces your mate to come out. Don't be that guy to force pints down their throat when they're not ready for that yet. Let them take it as they wish to take it.
The most therapeutic thing I've ever done, no matter if it's a breakup or just a generally low period of my life, is going for walks with friends, right? So easy, great exercise. You feel awesome after, and you do feel like you're processing it and you're bonding with your friends at the same time. So it's very underrated, but it's a huge thing.
Walks. What else? What else can we do?
Sitting in a sauna together.
Sitting in a sauna. Yeah, look, these are all great activities that you can do apart from just, going down to the bar and having a drink.
Playing sport, tennis, anything.
Having a kick of the footy. 30-meter drop punts to each other. That can be nice as well.
Exactly.
You've still got talking distance, going for a light jog where you can talk. There are an abundance of things that we can do. In summary, it's just we need to do it more. We need to encourage those things more, because we just think the first thing to do is just get on the beers with the boys and that'll make everything good. And we know all too well that it doesn't.
That's for sure. Because again, we don't want to suppress it. We actually want to process it. And there's a bloody big difference.
Exactly.
On that note, guys, we hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If there is anyone that you know that might be navigating this challenge or struggling with it, please do send it over to them. You never know how it might help them. On that note, Jeremy, have an amazing rest of your day and week. Goodbye.
Bye.